In this video, we're gonna talk about how to choose a good foundation for your song and how can you basically use your ears to choose what's good for your song, right? Because not all the samples are gonna be the same. Not everything is gonna be for your highest good. Here we have a full-blown song. Let's start fresh. Basically, that was one of my songs I've been working with by using my own sample pack. Now, I'm not fucking advertising. So how can you choose your best samples? Bro, you need to have the right samples. Here's my sample packs, right? Everything is cymatics because they know what they're doing, right? So what we're gonna do now is just look for trap, dubstep, kicks and snares so we can use. Let's see what Ivory's got. Drums. Right, first thing, when you choose your kick, make sure it stands out in the transient first. So the transient is just the first white bit here you see. This is quite good. It lacks the sub though, but that will come a bit later when we do the processing. These are all talking layers. This is, you can use for intro or build up, you know. But we're looking for something short. I don't even know what can we look for. Let me browse. You can even use trap, snares. Right, let's choose 174. We go here, all on stretch. It's like that. We'll try various samples. Right, let's use this as an example, right? What does he lack? Do you feel like something is lacking? Try to guess it. What is it? And this sample hasn't got the body, so everything else is there, but the body is missing. This one has the body, but hasn't got the top end. So let's put it on number 2. Let's add a NIQ on it and let's check what's missing. This is, I've done my own preset, right? You can make your own. These are the settings. This one is quite fine, however, it's missing something. It's missing presence around 200 Hertz. I'm not saying it's a clap, it should be like that. However, if we look more, we can find something that sounds good to our ears. So, because when you look for something, it's got to be precise, it's got to be crispy, it's got to be smacking, basically. Way too short, and it's missing body. You see all these snares? These are all good for layering them with the kick like this. But now we're looking for something that's gonna stand out on its own. The snares and the clap, you gotta develop your ear in order to choose the right snare for yourself, yeah, I mean. Right, how can you know something is got body? It's got the red things in there. Because if we click on, if we go to the kicks, you'll see it's red, right? So the hi-hats are blue. So the more you go down, the more it turns red or in a darker color. They've all got a body, so we can use them as samples. However, the shape is not what I want. So basically, we're aiming for something smaller with our own reverb. But these are all classics, so we need something like Skrillex type, like high-pitched. Bro, when you start looking for the best snare, have your idea in your head already. So the way I envision is I look at the whole track and I know like I need a solid bass, so I go from there. So a snare has to stand out, like be high pitched, be hugely compressed, and stand out on its own. This one is good, but it's missing top end, and instead of layering, we gotta look for something else that's already full on its own. This one is good, however, it's missing top end, is missing the high pitched, and in order to Let's try this like that. Let's try a reverb on it. First, let's have a look on the EQ to see where the body of the snare is. So around 600 is the fundamental. Everything was below under that. I like to cut away, add a bit of the top end, but not too much. Like just the, but this snare, just try to look for the same color here. But this name is already good on its own. I also like to remove what's already removed, because that's the muddiness of the snare itself. And that's how you end up with a good stuff, right? Reverb always comes after, because it's got its own EQ in it. So try to EQ around the 600. Remember where the fundamental of the snare was? 600. So everything was 600, must not have any reverb in it. Depending on your artistic choice or how much you want to blend the snare in, what you want to do is just keep the reverb settings according to the style you want. So I like to keep a relatively short reverb and go around that just to fill up the room. Spacey, cut a bit more of the low end, and how the high cut works here is off, right? You see down there, down here is off, right? So under 10k should be just the sweet choice for the snare, the vocals, for everything what goes reverb wise, because the hi-hats and stuff is gonna stay there. The high damping is gonna add a bit of the high end, so you can keep a bit of this in there. Now what's left to be done is to adjust the decay and the wet knob, right? If we go like this, and then we go with the wet level, we start wetting the stuff, the snare. God damn it, you get it, yeah, you're wetting. Okay, decay. Let's start with 2 seconds decay, just a bit to add up. Right, now how do we gain stage this thing? Because we can see it's going over 0. The way I like to do it is just add a soft clipper. What the soft clipper is doing is just to cut off the top end, the very bits. It's gonna reduce it to 0, but it's gonna keep the body on the RMS level, right? It's gonna actually on the dB meter and the VU meter, but it's gonna chop in the transient, but it's gonna keep the body of the snare. This is what we need for the bus, because we're gonna have these drums tied to the bus. We're gonna put this guy as a bus, but not bus. What we do on the bus, we take the snare. Let's snare. Let me make this a bit bigger. This is the bus. Let's color this thing with something, not like that, but like that. We make the snare blue, and we're gonna add the kick on number 2. Insert number 2. We do this, number 2. This is the kick. On the drum bus, there is a plugin called Knock. This is what I use for drums, right? This plugin, this right here. I think is one of the best ones, bro. No, not you. Right. You want to play with it. It's also got a limiter built in, so no matter what you do, it's not gonna pass over 0 unless you play with the out knob here. Here it's got an EQ for the low end, depending on what kind of a loop you're gonna add it. So considering we have the full drum loop, we're gonna leave this untouched and play just with the clip, a tiny bit of the air, because we're gonna have some hats added in, and just a tiny bit of saturation and a slightly 40% of the punch. Now the way I see it, this reverb I think is a bit too opened, so what we're doing is cut down the damp and a bit of a highs. So remember the low cut, it's got to be over the bass, because what we have is the fundamental of the snare being at 600. We want to go over that. So that's 607. We go over 600 because we don't want the fundamental of the snare be reproduced in the reverb. We only want slightly bit of the body from here, 600 to around 7000 or 8k. So now it's a bit dark, yeah. Now we can see we have some healthy drums. However, I want to change the kick into something more punchy because the processing's been done and I don't think it's smacking too much. Let's go with amplifiers. It's too open. This is made for a slow speed, I can clearly see that. So amplifier is working with dubstep, we don't want to touch on that. However, we can, if it's got a nice processing done on a kick. This one is good, but it's already processed, so we need for something lighter or can smack faster. That's way too short, we need a slightly longer one. No, it's gotta be something even better than this. This one seems fine, bro. What you want to do now is just, if you want to keep the whole body of the snare, you don't do this, because you're going to end up with a transient. What I suggest instead is just take this tool right here, go to stretch, so we can keep the pitch time, and now, okay, so we're losing the body. Now go and reset by using the mouse wheel, clicking on a time, so you can reset it according to how it was. I think it's a bit too much transient. Let me look for another one. This one is good as well. Why is it good? Let me check on span, if it's got stereo information in. Yeah, it's got. So we go to presets, session bank, mid-side stereo. It's very important to see the side of the kick. You must not go unless you know what you're doing on purpose. You must not go any lower than 200 Hz in stereo with a kick or any low frequencies like sub or your basses. Alright, with the snare you can go. This is a very serious kick, bro. Let me shrink it a bit. Oh, it's gonna lose energy. Reset. Right, now that you have a good kick, let's choose some good hi-hats. Let's check if it's got anything like can be of our interest. Oh, I'm looking for short hi-hats. Drums, cymbals. Let's choose anything, it doesn't matter. Let me check, like that. Shift and C to select all. Now we're gonna do is just fade them in a bit and choose the right snare after. So after we choose a position, we can look for the right hi-hat. Also play with the time or the mul. When you play with the multiplicator, just make sure this is just gonna make it slower or faster, but make sure you keep the stretch in place so you can keep the pitch. Okay. The levels and the mix down is gonna be done after. We're sending the snare, the hat. Right, another important thing I want to mention is about the kick and the snare and the hat. You never touch these things, right? Never. Why? Because this is like the limiter knob, that the out gain that's coming out of the kick, the snare and the hat. This is the... You don't want to do this. You are ruining everything. What you want to do is this. Play with this one. So if you want to hit on a mixer, let me bring it here because my picture is there. So if you want to bring this down, if you want to bring it down to 0, I obviously recommend we're using a soft clipper here, which we're gonna do in a second. You don't want to touch this knob to bring it. You want to touch the main knob of the kick, right, to bring the kick down. Right, so yeah, touch this one down. However, we're gonna let the full power of the kick, the whole body, hit the limiter, which is the soft clipper in this case. Why? Because we want to keep the girth and the juice of the kick in it, right? So we keep the kick and the snare in place. This hi-hat we can see is clearly bypassing any level. Parametric EQ for now. On a hi-hat, I always like to keep more of this, right? I always keep the low end of the hi-hat, because if you can easily recognize when you cut too much of the hi-hat. It's like it's taking its air off. So that's the drum bus right there, the knock. With and without the knock, let's check. Right, there is a difference. Okay, so now that we have the, let's say the so-called foundation, which is not completely full, we're gonna turn the hat off, actually a bit lower, around 6. All the sounds are gonna play around, there's just around 6. While we're letting the kick and the snare go through, it's just because they're gonna lead the song, so we keep them where they are. Besides these, we're gonna look for something else, bro. We're looking for something like every bar, so it's gotta be fairly long. Let's check it like that. Now, let's find the place for this. Just hit track is gonna tie it to there. So the way I do with this, with the main one, is this. I gotta sidechain it. So what we do is take any track, we dock it to left. On here, we do the fruity balance thing, or even, what's wrong with you, boy? Okay, that's good. Balance. We take the fruity balance. We have the hat going to the track where the balance is, side. So we have the hat going to the fruity balance, right? We go here in the balance, we create an automation clip, we just make it shorter, we make another, actually hold shift and mouse wheel to bring it all the way up there. Do this a double curve around this 39, whatever you have. Hold alt, click and shift. Shift is gonna bring the, you see what shift is doing? Right, Control Z. Let's try that again. Alt, shift, and then click. Right? For the kick, we need to have something to emulate for the bass. Considering the speed of the song and the transient of the kick, this one should be just fine. However, when you blend the bass in, you just gotta be slightly careful with this thing, because it's gonna create phase issue. So what we do is just bring this down a bit. So whenever the sub is hitting, it's just catching a tiny bit of the tail. Right, so that's for the kick. Now for the snare, we know we have a very fast transient. So what we do a different color here. Just take the shift and alt and then drag it. What you want to aim for is just these red things, because you know we have the snare cut at 600 where the fundamental is, so we consider that. So the fundamental is just where the red things are. So what you want to do is just consider only that, because when the sub hits, it's gonna act fast, way fast. You see the difference for the kick and the snare, because that's what's gonna lead the song. So we have a very short transient there for the snare and a very slightly longer one, very slightly for the kick. Going back to the hat, it's going here on the sidechain, of course. The sidechain is going straight to the master. We can also do a different sidechain for the drums only, so we can have the hats and the stuff tucked down whenever the kick and snare hits, or we can do this whenever the kick hits like that for the snare and cut these, which is what I highly recommend we do, right? So we can have them cut through clearly. So we are not taking this to go right through the sidechain. We're just gonna connect these straight to the master. We're gonna leave that there. And what we do with this, you just have it do that, just like that. Obviously consider the snare and make it like a, we also gotta check the levels of this thing. Like that, and then we take them all up. Right, so never don't touch these at all. So try to play from the sample itself. This one needs to be pitched down immediately. I can clearly see, especially when we work in D. So if we have a D, yeah, this is it. This usually comes atonal. The samples, all the samples, the kick and snare and everything is atonal, unless you want to really look for the key of it, or if it's coming already labeled, like the note of the kick. If it's not, just use your ears. I know it's hard, but you can. It's gonna take time to get used, and this is the beauty of it. Once you do that, you're gonna be unstoppable. I'm telling you. Now, what you do with the bass of your song is just automate the volume of the snare. This is purely optional, but I think we can definitely get some more natural things in there, in the snare, in the hat. These hats could also use some reverb. In this case, we're gonna get something like, no, just talk to right to have like a send. We add here a reverb, like a very short reverb with stuff. That's gonna cut most of the lows out. And we have this also chained here. We go on the reverb and we turn the drive all the way up, so we can have only the reverb as an output. So you can clearly keep that there. The damp like this, slightly bit of delay to have more room. This one needs slightly boosted by the high end. It's like it's already been stretched by something. I think it's coming as it is. If this is the base of your drop, what you want to do now is just, let's duplicate this for a second. Alright, so when the kick hits, nothing hits, which is good. And what we have on the sidechain is just what's going out on the master. I know this is sidechain because it's not hitting where the kick hits. We gotta keep the transient clean as possible on the snare and on the kick, right? So this is your bass. Let's look for something that's gonna add. Right, let's choose a mixer track for this one. We send it to the sidechain. Has nothing to do with the drums. I like to cut the tail either here where the snare hits or the kick. When you take a snare, a clash or anything, and you don't like, because I clearly don't like this, I think it's too much energy here and nothing there. It's nothing audible. So you want to bring the in knob out, which is this one here. You want to bring the in knob up. Right, this clash needs to have like a stereo widening effect on it. FL Studio's got a new, it's already here, spread stereo enhancer. Yeah, if you download that, you're gonna have the thingy, but I have a third-party one. Without then. Yeah, so you need to make room for the drums and everything that's gonna stay in there, and just keep the hats and everything on the sides, mostly at the top end. Right, let's do a quick trick here. We take the whole thing, we make it unique, and we drag just the, so we can have the, yeah, I like how to express like that. It's better, because I think people understand. If you do this and then that, you show them nothing, you know, just say, I do this and then do that. I think it's a bit too much. If you take all of these and then group with the above and make them all your business, I honestly don't need to do that, so it's up to you. Now, let's take something like the sub and add it in and make that something part of the, how can you make the sub? Here is how you make the sub. Escape. Right, we go to unsorted here with a 3x oscillator. You take this motherfucker, you throw it on number 8. You obviously send it to the sidechain unless you have a bass bus with your main bus. But in this case, we're talking about the bass of the song, right? So take the oscillator, send it to the sidechain so it can duck every time the kick and the snare hits, and you have it there, sidechain, right? Very, very important. Unless you bounce it out and you just work with samples. Let's try D3. We go into the oscillator. We turn all these down. Right, we have it there, but the keyboard only stops at Z, X, C, V, B, N, M. Right, so what we do, we go in there, we go here and change this from C5 to C6, and make sure you use the right mouse button. Like that, right? Let's say we're working in D. When you work with the sub, make sure you take slide notes with low volume like this on them, and you just throw them here and there, or whenever the sub is ending. Is very important. Why? Because they will add up a bit of natural thingy in them in the song, and it's very, very cool to have it. Right, let's talk about levels. Now that we have the, actually let me work up a bit the bass. Let's try adding a something like sad noise, a crunchy. When you add up an EQ, not the Pro Q, but parametric EQ 2, when you have this motherfucker, make sure you have the linear phase turned on. There is a slight difference, but it makes a tremendous difference at the output on a master. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can. So I can because I train myself to hear it, and I know there is a difference. However, this comes at a cost. So the cost is your CPU up there. It's gonna eat up a lot of CPU. You know, it's like you see already the 0.92 latency and then 32. Right from 0 to 32, it's gonna eat up a bit more processing power. Now let's do a dip at around 300 Hertz. I don't want to keep the top end, so we're gonna add a low pass with it like that. The next thing is gonna be either blowed overdrive with the color all the way down to boost up the harmonic. Try to keep it around 0 without touching this knob and without adding a soft clipper. Right, next thing we go on the span, and it must not surpass minus 29 dB, minus 30 dBs here. So what you want to do, the proper gain staging is done only by using the knob. Right, this knob. Here is the trick. We're adding saturation from here, but we're gonna force cap it. So we're adding the soft clipper. The maximum is gonna be all the way up here over minus 6 dB FS here. And we're gonna turn it down from the mixer knob. This is the only time I touch the mixer knob. This is the purpose of it. Why? It's gonna keep the girth, the body of the bass, while without introducing unpleasant sounds, I mean artifacts, or without diluting the core essence of it, like you saw when we took down the saturation. Got it? Very, very important. This is the only moment. So minus 6, remember, yeah? So yeah, minus 6 dB on there, but we're gonna have the minus 6 here, around minus 6 there, and around minus 6 on the master. Now, check this out. We leave span here, and we do the proper gain staging as in the master. And so we're working with the limiter. Check this out. Let's add 6 dB of gain. Let's turn the saturation, not 300. Let's turn minus 600. So minus 5 dB of saturation. What the dB saturation is like how the Pro L works, which is not gonna something I use, but I'd rather use the limiter. It's like this is a fast attack and fast release, and it's not working wisely because it's not meant for the sub. The fast attack and the fast release only works for the lowest fundamental. And when you work with the sub, we have, let's say, 50 Hertz. So 50 Hertz is for a full cycle, and the fast attack and the fast release is not gonna have time to catch the transient of one full cycle from the sub frequencies. So what we want to do is work with minus 5. I saw as the master engineer do it. So minus 5 is the safe limit. Now that's one way of saturating the whole thing, but the gain staging and how the processing is done, how the gain is working, is by using this attack and this release time. Let's check. So this is the first stage of saturation. That's the after the gain, but this is before the gain, the way I remember. So what you want to do, remember we have 55, yeah? So 55, I think it's 55 milliseconds. We go with 55 release, and the transient is gonna be, let's put 5 milliseconds. You gotta really listen into this. On the limiter on the master, it's only working the way I see it. It's gonna only affect according to how the sub is working. So they're very hand in hand. If you don't want to have distortion or any unpleasant effects. So that's the only thing you need to really focus on. The ceiling has to be all the way up. Now we can clearly see the mistakes, and now from here we can correct mistakes of the bass, right? Of the foundation. we're gonna check the hi-hat. I think it's got something. So what we do is select everything. We just remove the ends if we don't want to have any clipping points or anything. Just make sure you cut off all the peaks from the EQ. Right, let's check this one. I think this one is fine. There we go, high pass. Like that. Let's check the kick. I think the kick is fine. The snare, however, has got a bit of a mud. We want to reduce a bit the fundamental. We want to normalize and level it out. And we cut off a bit more from here. 7 kilohertz. We're gonna rely heavily on the verb a bit. Yep, we're also gonna turn the decay time a bit. So we can counterbalance the high end. Now, the way I see it, something is interfering with the low end. So we start from the low end. These hats are not good at all. Right, here's what we do. We get the Pro Q3. We put this reverb actually before the reverb, so we can have the reverb being expanded, because this is a stereo cut. That's all I'm doing. I'm putting all this stuff in stereo, from the sides to the mono. Right, these hats right here, you see them. Transient processor. This thing is gonna tame the attack. You gotta really learn how this works, man. Sometimes can be so good. We're gonna add the body and cut off the transients. This is gonna focus when you work with full drum loops. It's gonna focus on the sub or the other high end. We're gonna leave that there. I think if we have a bit too much of processing, we go into the drum bus. We take the punch slightly down a bit. Turn this down 600. Right, so span after the limiter always. And this is how you make a solid foundation for your song. Now, right, let's have a look here. I want to show you something just because we are at this stage. So this hole right here is for the main sound to be in, the main bass, the main everything. This lighter color has to fill up the space. Here is a track from Marauder, and I'll show you the track right now. Alright, we disable the limiter. Let's throw this on a free mixer track. I'm gonna turn down the volume a bit. Check this. Right, here's the full track. This is the spectrum curve you need. This thing, like 71 Hertz, has to be completely mono almost. You can see that. Right, around 200 Hertz. Because I look up there. Bro, you need to copy this. 100, 500, 400. From 100 to 400, you need to have this dip immediately. The sub is not surpassing too much, the 20 dB mark or -6. And then you have the hertz from 6 to 12, 13, 11 even K hertz, and everything sits like that. And this is the stereo curve. If you can clearly see, it closely matches the main sound, which is the mid. This is the lighter green is the mid, right? And this is what you need as well. So once you have span, I think it's free, but you can get it from if you know how to. And you can have this tool. It's very, very good. And what you're aiming for is this dip here. So you have the sub and everything with the limiter in our case, right? It's gotta be something like that. So we're getting there, right? The snare is not included because the snare is just a transient. So what you wanna achieve is something like this. Obviously, with the more experience you got, the more better you're gonna get at this. And yeah, and everything else, the sub is gonna be here, but make sure you keep the deep as I showed you in that. And this concludes the tutorial for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.